Welcome to Zoe Stories. A failed science experiment made me a girl. My name is Ethan, and I'm a 21-year-old biology student at university. I've always been the kind of guy who loves science. Well, loved it, I guess. There's something about the structure, the laws of nature, the predictability of it all. But lately, I've been feeling like a fraud in my own life. I don't fit into the neat boxes science promises. I've spent the last few years with a chip on my shoulder, feeling out of place among my peers, unsure of where I belong, or even who I am. And then it happened. My world was turned upside down by one reckless decision. It was supposed to be a simple experiment, just a harmless project for my final year in the lab. Something to impress the professors, get that recommendation, and if I'm being honest, get a few good looks from the girls. But I couldn't have been more wrong. The experiment went completely off the rails. One miscalculation, one tiny mistake, and it triggered something I couldn't even comprehend. One moment, I was tweaking the chemicals in a test tube trying to perfect my project. The next, I was looking at a reflection that wasn't mine, wasn't even supposed to be possible. I was a girl. In that instant, everything I knew about myself, everything I thought I understood about science and the world around me, shattered. I wasn't sure if I should be scared, amazed, or ashamed, but one thing was clear. My life was never going to be the same again. And somehow, I had no idea how to fix it. Or if I even wanted to. At first, I thought I was dreaming. I stood there, in the lab, staring at the reflection in the glass. The face staring back at me was soft, unfamiliar, female. Long hair cascaded around my shoulders in waves, and my features were delicate, more rounded than I was used to. Panic set in like a wave crashing over me, and I stumbled backward, my breath coming in shallow gasps. What the hells? I whispered, my voice different. It was softer, higher, like someone else's. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, but my hands trembled as I reached up to touch my face, my neck, my arms, skin that wasn't mine. I could feel my pulse in every part of my body. This wasn't possible. It couldn't be. I knew the science behind it all. This wasn't supposed to happen. It was supposed to be a normal experiment. Nothing more. But then there was this strange, unsettling part of me that wanted to explore it, to see what it meant. Could I make sense of this? Could I learn from it? What if this change wasn't as bad as I thought? The idea of being someone new, of escaping the life I'd been struggling with, tugged at me like a hidden temptation. I could leave behind my doubts about who I was. What if I could finally be the person I'd never been able to figure out before? But there was a terrifying truth, too, the idea that I was stuck like this forever. What if it wasn't just my appearance that had changed, but my entire life? I could feel my stomach churn with the thought. The uncertainty was suffocating. Who would I be? How would I even explain this to anyone? My family? Friends? Would I lose everything that mattered to me just because of one stupid mistake? I didn't know what to do. My mind raced with possibilities, some hopeful, some terrifying, and I couldn't decide which way to go. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, peering over, not sure whether to jump or back away. I spent hours pacing back and forth in my small apartment, barely registering the cluttered mess around me. My head was spinning with questions I couldn't answer. The transformation was real, but the future seemed like a haze of unknowns. I couldn't think straight. I knew I had to talk to someone who would understand, or at least try to. I reached for my phone and dialed Sam's number. He was the only one I could trust to be brutally honest with me, the one person who had been there through everything, even when I wasn't sure who I was anymore. He picked up on the third ring, his voice crackling with concern. "Hey man, you alright? You've been quiet for hours." "Sam," I hesitated, unsure how to even start. "Something happened. Something huge. I'm not sure what to do." "Okay, you're starting to freak me out here. What happened?" Taking a deep breath, I spilled the whole story. How I'd gotten into this experiment, how it had gone horribly wrong, and now I was this. I could practically feel Sam's eyebrows raising on the other end of the line. Wait, you're saying you're a girl now?"
"Yeah."
"A girl," I muttered, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I don't know what to do with this, Sam." "What do I do?" There was a long silence on the other end. Then Sam's voice, steady but cautious, came through. Look, I don't know what to say, but you've got options. Maybe you can fix it, maybe you can't. But you're still you, right? I feel different, I whispered, as if admitting it out loud made it more real. I don't even know what that means anymore. Sam sighed, a sound that echoed with frustration. You've got a choice here. You can either let this wreck you, or you can try to figure it out. The only way you're going to know what comes next is if you stop sitting around and make a move. I stood there, staring at my reflection once again, the words echoing in my mind. Make a move. But what move was there to make? I just walked into a lab, done an experiment, and ended up like this. It wasn't like I had a map or instructions for how to undo it. There was no reversing the clock. I paced again, each step feeling heavier. Suddenly, the weight of it all crushed down on me. What if this was permanent? What if I couldn't fix it? Could I keep pretending to be someone I wasn't, someone who didn't feel like me at all? Or would I have to face the world as someone new, someone I didn't even know yet? The sound of a knock at the door startled me, breaking my thoughts into 1,000 fragments. My heart raced as I wiped my hands on my jeans, too terrified to face whoever it was. What did they see when they looked at me? What would they think? Was I still the person I had been a few days ago, or was that person gone forever? I froze, heart hammering in my chest as the knock came again, more insistent this time. I hadn't expected company, especially not when I was standing here, questioning everything. My mind raced, but I couldn't avoid the door forever. With a deep breath, I forced myself to move, each step heavy, as if I was walking towards some kind of irreversible change. When I opened it, Sam stood there, his face unreadable. I almost wanted to laugh. His sudden appearance felt like a sign. Like fate had pushed him to come here to do what I couldn't bring myself to do. You're not answering your calls, Sam said, his tone sharp with concern. What's going on? I looked past him at the street below, and then back at the apartment, my prison for the past few days. I'm stuck, Sam. I'm stuck in this body, this a life. I don't know if I can keep pretending to be the person I was. His eyes softened for a moment, and then he stepped inside, closing the door behind him. You don't have to pretend, but you do have to choose. You can't live in this limbo forever. I wanted to scream. How am I supposed to choose when nothing feels right? When everything about me has changed? Maybe it's not about what's right. Maybe it's about figuring out who you're going to be from here on. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. He was right. I had to make a choice. Was I going to fight this, try to reverse it, or was I going to accept it and move forward, face the world as someone new? Either way, it felt like the weight of my old life, my old self, was slipping away. There was no going back. Whatever I chose now would shape everything from here on out. And as the realization hit, my heart raced with a mix of fear and exhilaration. This was my moment. I could either stay in the past or step into an unknown future. And in that moment, I had to decide. The transformation started slowly, almost imperceptibly. At first, it was nothing more than a shift in my reflection. I'd been avoiding the mirror for days, but today, I couldn't ignore it any longer. I stood in front of it, staring at the unfamiliar face staring back at me. My skin was softer, smoother. My cheekbones more prominent. My hair, which had been unkempt and short, now cascaded in waves that felt out of place but, somehow, right. I couldn't deny it. My features had softened, reshaped, and there was no denying the change. I reached up, running my fingers through my hair, feeling the length, the silkiness. My fingers trembled as I traced the outline of my face, unsure of what to make of it. I wasn't just seeing something different. I was feeling it too. The weight of my chest felt heavier, more pronounced. I could sense the subtle curve of my hips in the fabric of my clothes. My body had become an entirely different entity when I wasn't quite sure how to inhabit. I moved to the mirror again, taking in the way my clothes now fit in a way they never had before. They clung to my new shape in ways that made me uncomfortable, but also made me feel alive. Every shift, every movement felt more aware, like I was rediscovering a body I didn't recognize but could no longer deny. It was like an out-of-body experience, watching myself adjust to this new form. I felt my heart race, and not in the excited way I thought I would. It was anxiety, fear. I didn't want to lose the person I had been, but I also couldn't ignore the person I was becoming. My mind raced, torn between the old me and the new me. Is this really me's? I whispered, my voice sounding different, higher, smoother, like it belonged to someone else. As I stepped out into the world, it felt like I was walking on fragile glass. Every glance from the people around me felt like they were seeing a stranger, and I was desperate for them to recognize me. But what if they didn't? What if they didn't see me at all? I walked down the street, my reflection in every window I passed catching my attention. It was impossible to ignore. The woman staring back at me was undeniably real, but she was a stranger, someone I hadn't chosen to become. I felt an overwhelming rush of emotions, grief, confusion, even shame. It was all too much, and yet there was something else too. In the quiet moments, when I wasn't looking at my reflection or hearing the whispers of others, I felt a strange stirring inside me. Maybe it was acceptance. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was both. With each passing minute, I realized I was beginning to understand this new version of myself, not just physically, but emotionally too. Each awkward moment, each strange glance, was a step closer to figuring out who I could become in this new skin. And, terrifyingly, I realized I didn't know if I was ready, but I had no choice but to keep moving forward. The moment of truth came sooner than I expected, and it hit like a freight train. I was standing at the front of a crowded party, feeling the weight of every eye on me. The world seemed to move in slow motion as I adjusted the strap of my dress, the soft fabric clinging to my body in ways that were starting to feel familiar, but no less strange. The buzz of conversation around me felt distant, like I was in a glass bubble, unable to reach out and connect. Then he walked in. Ethan, my best friend, the one who had started all of this, who had been there through every failed experiment, every step into the unknown. His eyes locked onto mine across the room, and everything else faded into nothing. The room became a blur. The music, the chatter, even the awkward laughter, it all disappeared as I waited for him to approach. He didn't say anything at first, just stared, his gaze flicking up and down, taking me in like I was something he had never seen before. The weight of his silence was suffocating. I could feel my stomach twist into knots. I had spent so long trying to process this change, trying to understand it, but now, in front of him, in front of everyone, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had crossed a line, one I couldn't come back from. Is this really you? His voice broke through the silence like a sharp blade. I nodded, swallowing hard. Yeah, this is me now. His eyes softened, a mixture of disbelief and something else, something I couldn't quite place. I wanted to reach out to him, to ask for his approval, his understanding. But I didn't. I wasn't sure if I even deserved it anymore. He stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder, his touch tentative, as if afraid I might shatter. You're different, he said, the words heavy with unspoken meaning. I laughed, though it didn't feel like laughter. Yeah, I guess I am. Then, without warning, he pulled me into a tight hug. I froze for a second, unsure of how to respond, but then I felt the warmth of his embrace, and the tension that had been building in me for so long started to melt away. I didn't know what this change meant for us, whether I could ever go back to being the person I was, or whether I even wanted to. But in that moment, his acceptance, his willingness to stand by me, made me realize something vital. I wasn't alone in this anymore. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to help me move forward. As the weeks passed, I found myself settling into this new reality, one I never imagined would feel so right. There were moments of doubt, yes. Times when the reflection in the mirror would catch me off guard, reminding me of the person I used to be, someone unfamiliar, distant. But there was also a sense of peace, a quiet satisfaction in knowing I had chosen this path, even when it seemed impossible.